Hello all. I would like to welcome you all for the webinar of Azure AI Fundamentals AI-900. I have Mr. Pratit Mehta with me, who is working as a cloud solution architect with Cloudlet Technologies. He is a multi-cloud specialist and holds 6+ years of experience in cloud technology. Pratit will be speaker for the day. Over to you, Pratit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiran. Welcome to the AI 900 certification preparation webinar. We'll be talking about what are the key factors that is being considered for Microsoft AI Fundamentals certification. Before we talk about the certification, let me introduce ourselves. Right, we are Cloud Tech. We are a leading provider of training and consulting services in all the leading clouds, big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, DevOps, and IoT. Right, we have over a period of 8 years, we have trained 200,000, that is 2 lakh professionals in both VILT as well as ILT modes of training deliveries for across 75 or more clients. We have a dynamic team of Microsoft certified trainers and certified professional. I am one of them, right? Throughout the organization, we hold somewhere around, the latest count is 245 certificates on different associate level certificates. I'm not counting the fundamental levels on different clouds, right? We have delivered about 80 to 85 cloud projects, and we have this consulting division who complements our training. So I myself have been part of 11 to 12 projects now, right? We are Microsoft's gold partner, and we also have been awarded with Partner of the Year finalist award for learning, which is held globally, right? That's about my organization, right? This is who I am, right? The top right corner, that's how exactly I look. And the bottom right corner is my QR code, which will take you to my LinkedIn profile, right? I am Prathit Mehta. I am working as a solutions architect cloud with Cloudlet Technologies. I have a bunch of certificate. I have both AI 900 and AI 100 for the AI vertical of Azure alongside the DP100, the DP200, the AZ104, right? And also a bunch of server certificates like 2003, 2007, right? Older ones. And on the complementary cloud side, on the AWS side, I have both a solutions architect associate as well as professional level certification. And I am a certified Microsoft trainer, right? Uh, Without further ado, let's jump on what this exam is all about, right? This AI 900 is a stepping stone for AI on Azure, right? AI 900 is the exam which judges you on fundamentals of artificial intelligence and the fundamentals of artificial intelligence on how will you use artificial intelligence on Azure, right? This particular exam is a foundational level exam, which is the stepping stone for anybody who wants to start their career in AI or anybody who has been working in AI and wants to move towards the cloud era, right? This particular exam consists of 50 plus question, 50 to 55 questions will be there. Just give me a second. Let me just turn on the pen. Right, it will have 50 to 55 questions, right? The exam totally is of 90 minutes, right? So from the time you start till your result is generated and you finish everything, the time that is given is 90 minutes, out of which this 50 odd questions you are supposed to answer them in 60 minutes. So to answer this 50 questions, you get 60 minutes, and the remaining 30 minutes is for post post test survey that you have to fill up, right? This particular exam has a fundamental difficulty level, so it is not a lot of extensive questions will come in the examination. The examination will have basic fundamental questions, and in terms of difficulty, they'll be a little easier than what we get on AI-100 or AZ-104 or any other associate level exam, right? The passing percentage is about 70, right? So Microsoft judges or Microsoft gives you marks between 100 to 1000. And what we have seen, to be very honest, for me, it was 700 that was the passing marks. So which is about 70% of the total, the highest score that we can get, right? Uh, and we have seen that 700 is the ballpark range where all the exams stay. This particular exam can be either taken on testing center or it can be taken at home. You can have a self-proctored or a proctored exam that you can take it by yourself sitting at your home. In this pandemic, I did that. I gave almost 4 exams sitting at my home, right, and got certified on them as well, right? I This particular exam has multiple types of question. Unlike all the other exam where your questions are divided in multiple sections, what I saw is that this particular exam has a single section with all the questions in it, right? The questions might be multiple choice where there will be radio buttons. You will have to select one of four or one of four kind of a question. The question will go on and there'll be 4 or 5 answers out of which you have to choose the correct answer, right? Uh, there are other type of multiple choices question where there'll be question and you'll have multiple answers to choose, right? 2 of 5 or 3 of 8 kind of a thing, right? Where you have to check the correct answers and both will carry some weightage of marks. So it is not like, uh, let's say you forgot, you only know one answer and you don't know the other answer. Even if you check only a single box, you get partially graded, right? The fill in the blanks type of question. Now, these are a very beautiful kind of questions that Microsoft has. Uh, like, remember we used to give exams in our schools and colleges where you used to actually schools where we used to get a sentence and then there used to be a blank that you had to fill in, right? This is similar, but here this blank would be a drop down, right? So options will open up and you have to choose the correct option to make the sentence true. Okay. Yes, no, or true, false type of questions also show up in the examination, which will say that for let's say for computer vision, whether this is true or not, right? Whether the statements are true or not. You will have drag and drop and arrange in order kind of questions as well, where you can see that there will be a task given and correspondingly machine learning workload you will have to choose. So there will be a task, there'll be multiple options given. You have to drag this option from here to here, right? Kind of match the following kind of question, but in a drag and drop manner, right? And this particular exam doesn't, in my exam, I had 53 questions, but it didn't include any arrange in order. But we have seen that a couple of my colleagues did receive a arrange in order kind of a question where the task was more surrounding a specific feature of Azure machine learning service. We'll talk about it in the subsequent time, right? This particular exam costs you 3,696 rupees plus GST in India, right? This exam has multiple. I mean, Microsoft has multiple pricing for multiple different countries. For India, it is 3,696 plus GST. The certificate is valid for 2 years. The validity of this particular exam is 2 years. So if you give the exam today, in 2 years of time, your certification will expire, right? The services from where the most amount of questions came, or the services that were overpowering the exam, they were Azure Machine Learning Service, uh, I'm so sorry, the Azure Machine Learning Service, the Cognitive Service, the Bot Service, and I also had a few questions from Fundamentals of AI and Responsible AI, right? This exam can be given on Pearson centers if you are happy to travel with the precautions on and with by keeping social distancing. We are following social distancing at our Pearson Center at Bangalore. Our Pearson Center is open if you want to reach out to us and give the exam. If you are someone who's old school that cannot give exam sitting at home and wants to attend or wants to go to a Pearson Center to attend the exam, ours is open. You can get in touch with anybody on our website, or I'll share the contact details later in the webinar. You can get in touch with anyone and someone will get you in touch with the correct person who can guide you on how to book an exam on cloud that's Pearson Center, right? Or what I did, you can do that as well. If you're comfortable giving the exam and if you have a proper home office setup, you can actually give the exam sitting at your home or at your office, right? It's very, very easy. You just need proper bandwidth, proper camera on your laptop or your desktop, and a proper mic that does not cancel any kind of noise, right? Uh, so Proctor can so all these three should be constantly on, will be constantly on. Proctor will allow you to take the exam only if the surroundings are clean and you don't have anything at your hand's reach other than the identification proof that you need to give, right? Okay, so now that's about the exam. If you have any questions, please keep them flowing in the chat. I have my colleagues who will be answering any kind of queries you may have, right? This particular exam, AI 900, grades you or grades you in 5 different criterias. It which has different weights, uh, describing the AI workload and AI workload consideration is the first study area that weighs 15 to 20%. So somewhere around, if we consider 50 questions in the exam, somewhere around 8 to 10 questions might come from this area. So sorry. This then you have fundamentals of machine learning on Azure, which has the highest weightage in terms of number of questions. There will be somewhere around 15, 15 to 18 questions from this area, and this area is actually bigger than the other study areas. Even when we are teaching the actual course, this particular area has a bigger weightage in it, right? You have the third criteria, and the remaining three criterias same ways 15 to 20%, which is 8 to 10 questions each, which are describing the features of computer vision workloads on Azure, the natural language processing on Azure, and the conversational AI on Azure. We'll talk about each of the criterias and important factors that you should keep in mind for each of the criteria, along with some of the sample questions in today's webinar, right? So let us jump into the first study area, which is having 15 to 20% of the weightage, right? Before we move ahead, I would want to pause for a second and look for an answer on what do you think is AI, right? What do you feel about AI? Again, this is a live session, so your answers can be very much appreciated in the Q&A. So if you guys are not aware, where you are seeing this particular video on the right hand side on top, you'll have a Q&A icon, which you can click and post your questions. So yes, what is AI? While I am while I'm receiving the answers, There is one question that has been asked, which I think I should address it right away. Uh, Someone is asking that whether any kind of coding experience is required for AI 900 or any subsequent Azure AI certification. Uh, Not really. You do not need to have coding experience because it's not being asked in the examination, but you should be able to read the code. You should be able to understand how the APIs can be called, right? Because some of the nomenclatures of like REST is a framework to call the API, which requires the HTTP endpoint and the key to talk to. This nomenclatures may come in the examination. Right. So, like a lot of you have replied, right? AI is nothing but making sure that putting intelligence in the machine so that machine can actually give me results, or machine can actually do some of the task or do thinking uh, like me, right? So similarly, there are specific workloads for AI that Microsoft has defined and uh, will be will be asking questions surrounding them, right? The first one is machine learning, right? And an example is also given that machine learning is something that predicts the model based on the data and past statistics, right? An example could be, let's say, you want to predict the number of sale or number of units or number of rental of a cycle based on temperature or humidity or season, right? You already have past data and you want to derive uh, a particular value from the existing data from the statistics is called machine learning. Machine learning also talks about, let's say you want to predict whether or not a person to whom a financial organization is giving the loan is uh, is going to return or is going to repay the loan or not. So whether the financial institution should be granting loan to that person or not, right? There is a second kind of workload is anomaly detection, right? Is where you build AI systems that detects unusual patterns or events, which enables us to take preemptive actions, right? Like the best example that we have that we are using on a daily basis is our mailbox, right? You you can see that some of the mails don't land in your inbox. They go to your spam, or they go to the clutter, or they go to junk mailboxes. Those are the anomalies detected by a machine learning model that has been deployed by the email service provider. If you are using Microsoft, then it would be Office 365. If you are using G Suite, then I mean Google, then it will be G Suite, or Gmail, then it will be G Suite, right? That takes the preemptive action of you not being able to see the mail directly in inbox, which reduces the chances of you clicking or you clicking a phishing email, right? The third kind of workload is computer vision workload, which is where we build the AI applications that will interpret the visual input from, let's say, cameras or images or videos, and get something out from there. Let's say we are going to talk about this in little more depth flowing through the slides. But let's give one small example, right? Like nowadays, every airport requires to make sure that people are wearing masks or not, right? Or every organization should allow only some of them, only the employees who are wearing masks. So you can build a computer vision setup that is installed along with your door locks that can detect whether a particular person is wearing a mask or not. And it is very easy uh, by using the Azure's computer custom vision APIs. We'll talk about it, right? So that's one more kind of workload. And then the second last workload is natural language processing. Uh, a live example of natural language processing that I want to show is that it can interpret the written and spoken language. Now, the best example that we have, again, we are using this feature. I mean, we are not using this feature, but it is embedded in all of the software that we use, right? Like all the Microsoft softwares. Currently, you can see that it is enabled by Microsoft's PowerPoint, that is understanding what I am trying to speak, and it is actually converting that speech to text by understanding what I am trying to convey, right? So this is an example of natural language processing. We'll talk about natural language processing workloads and how you handle it on Azure again in the following slides, right? And the last workload is what we use always. We have Swiggy that we use where we want to raise a concern, and there is a support bot that we can talk to who can guide us on everything, right? Whether we need a replacement of item or return on an item, even for Amazon's purchases, if we want to return, there is a bot that is been talking to us, right? Basically an AI agent that can engage in dialogues with human users, correct? So these are the 5 AI workloads surrounding which questions will show up in the examination. I'll show you one sample question on this a couple of slides after this, right? But to build these AI workloads, there are several challenges involved, right? Uh, these challenges are something that needs to be worked upon, right? The challenge is like, let's say, biases that can affect the result. So let's say if you're, I'm so sorry. So if your data, let's say you're building a loan approval model, right? If this historical data has a lot of males in it, and there is less data on a particular gender, let's say females are not someone who takes a lot of loan, so that will create bias on the model, right? If you have a single gender overpowering, or if you have a lot of data for females, then males will not the accuracy of predicting whether a loan should be approved for a male or not will decrease, right? Errors in some of the AI solutions can cause harm to life, right? Let's say one of the autonomous vehicle system, right? Let's say that experiences failure, it can result into a catastrophic accident, correct? Similarly, data that is being used to train your models, right? Data that is being used to train your AI, it has to be secure, right? You can't, it cannot be exposed, right? A medical diagnostic bot, which is trained using the sensitive patient data, and if it's stored insecurely, that's a breach of privacy for a lot of the patients, right? And there are chances that there are solutions which may not work for everyone, right? Like something, let's say you have created a predictive application that can scan an object and tell us what, I mean, that can show us what that object is. But if that particular application does not have audio output, it is not going to help the visually impaired users, right? And it is very, very difficult to build trust for end user, right? An AI based financial tool that makes the investment recommendation, it is very, very difficult for the users to trust that system, right? What are they based on, correct? And at the end of the day, if an AI fails, who is responsible for driving the decisions or for the decisions that is been taken by AI, right? So to resolve all of these challenges, Microsoft has come up with 6 different principles for responsible AI, right? Uh, these all 6 principles is a very, very huge factor for those 8 to 10 questions that come from this particular section, right? I'm going to talk about all of this 6 and what kind of question comes that we'll see in the next slide, right? So first one that they have crafted is fairness, right? Which talks about that AI systems should treat all the people fairly. For an example, suppose you create a machine learning model to actually support a loan approval process, right? Loan approval application for a bank. The model should make predictions of whether or not the loan should be approved without incorporating any kind of bias on gender or ethnicity or any other factors that may result in an unfair advantage or an unfair disadvantage to a specific group of applicants, right? Azure Machine Learning as a service itself, it includes the capability to interpret the models and quantify the extent to which each feature of the data influences the model's prediction. Now, feature, I hope everybody is aware that every attribute that matters for the machine learning prediction is called a feature, right? This capability of Azure Machine Learning Service that tells which feature has the most amount of influence helps a lot of data scientists and developers to identify and mitigate biases in the model, right? The next principle is reliability and safety. An AI system should perform reliably and safely, right? For an example, consider an AI-based system for autonomous vehicle, or even a machine learning model that diagnoses patient symptoms and recommends the prescriptions. Unreliability in this kind of system can result in substantial risk to a human life, right? That's your reliability and safety, right? AI-based software application uh, that you are developing must be subjected to rigorous testing and deployment management process that ensures that they work as expected before they are actually released, right? And that's why all those black box, white box testing is there in the life cycle of software development, right? The third principle that for responsible AI is privacy and security, right? Uh, AI system should be very, very secure and respect the privacy of the data. The machine learning models on which AI systems are based uh, rely on a large volumes of data which may contain personal details that must be kept private, right? Even after the models are trained and the system is in production, it uses new data to make the prediction or take any kind of action that may be subject to privacy or security concerns, right? That's about your privacy and security. The next principle that Microsoft has defined for responsible AI is inclusiveness, right? And the AI systems should empower everyone and engage people. AI should bring benefits to all the parts of society, regardless of physical ability or gender or sexual orientation or ethnicity or any other factor, right? And the last two, which are the most important factors for building any kind of AI system, is transparency and accountability. right? Let's talk about them one after the other, right? AI systems should be understandable, right? Uh, Users should be made fully aware of the purpose of the system and how it works, and what are the limitations that may be expected for the user. Now, that will make the user trust the system, right? People should be accountable for AI systems. You designers or developers cannot raise the hand that it's not us who took the decision, it's the AI who took the decision. It is their responsibility that they work within a framework of governance and the organizational principles that ensures that the solution meets ethical and legal standards that are defined by the organization, right? Or by the government, right? All these six principles can be further explored on Microsoft.com slash AI slash responsible AI. Okay. That brings me to a halt of the first 15 to 20% of the examination, right? That's where I pause for first question. Right? The question says that making sure that the end users are aware about the limitations of an AI-based application that they are using is an example of which responsible AI principle. I am waiting for the answers. Answers are welcome in the chat. I mean Q&A. You can put it up there. I'll be waiting for about 2 minutes before I reveal the correct answer. I see the answers flowing. Absolutely correct. Most of you have got it correct. The correct answer is transparency. Transparency to let them know that what are the limitations of this AI-based application. Correct. Now, this kind of question will be part of those 8 to 10 questions. And the other kind of question that will be part of those 8 to 10 questions are uh, would be like this. Predicting the number of unit uh, that will be sold is what type of AI workload, right? Again, I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes for the answers to flow. Mhm. Absolutely correct. All of you have got it on point, right? This predicting a number of unit that needs to be sold is a machine learning type of workload, right? There will be some more questions like uh, you want to build build an AI agent that can reply back on FAQs. Is what kind of AI workload? The answer is conversational AI. You want to detect diversions on the data, is what kind of AI workload? It's anomaly detection. You want to understand what the user is trying to say is natural language processing kind of workload, right? So all the AI workloads that we saw, right, on the previous slide, which is this, everybody is a candidate of a question or multiple questions in the examination, right? Just make sure that you have it in mind that which workload is used for what, right? So machine learning for predictive analysis, anomaly detection for detecting unusual patterns, computer vision to get the insights of an image, NLP to interpret written or spoken language, and conversational AI to build the bots. Okay, let's move on to the second phase or second study area for this examination, which has a huge weightage, right? We are going to talk about what is machine learning. We are going to talk about the different types of machine learning. The exam will also contain questions surrounding different kind of algorithms. It is going to talk about Azure machine learning service. It's going to talk about uh, automated machine learning with Azure machine learning, and you will have questions from machine learning's visual designer as well. There are a lot of questions that will come uh, from this particular section, somewhere almost around 35 to 30 to 35%, which is 15 to 18 questions that will be there from this particular section, right? Let's talk about it, right? What's machine learning, right? Machine learning is nothing but creating predictive models that finds the relationship in the data, right? Let me put it in a nice little graphical manner, right? Where let's say you have some of the samples of flowers where you it has their own features, right? Everybody has petals, stem, etc., and you can label each of them with their names, right? Then this sample data can be processed, correct, to find this label when you give a particular flower, right? So you train the model and build a machine learning model which can just see the flower and can return that what kind of flower that is. That is what is machine learning, right? Now, machine learning has three different types of machine learning, right? Or three different types of learning. You have supervised learning, where all the data points or all the features are labeled, correct? You have unsupervised, where all the features are not labeled, correct? And then you have semi-supervised, where some of them are labeled and some of them are not labeled, right? And all of this has different kind of machine learning algorithms. This particular examination, the AI-900 focuses on couple of supervised algorithms and a particular unsupervised algorithm, right? So let's talk about it. Regression is a supervised algorithm which is most common machine learning technique that is used to predict a numeric value like price or sales total or any other measure that has the numeric output, right? Again, I'm going to take it as an example, and I'm trying to cover all the aspects of the supervised machine learning model training, right? So let's start with we'll take an example of a bicycle rental company that wants to predict the number of rentals on a given day based on the weather condition, right? First of all, because it's a supervised learning and it's a machine learning thing, we'll need statistical data, correct? So here we are going to start with some of the historical data about the cycle rentals, right? For this particular iteration, for the simple example, I'm going to only consider a single factor, that is the temperature, right? Now, the number of rentals is the label that we want to predict, right? And we are going to use the temperature as the feature, right? In machine learning language, we refer to features as X and the labels as Y, right? This function will, so using this X and Y will build a function which will be the basis of a model that can be used to predict the Y's for a given X, right? But to do so, first we'll divide our data set into training and validation data, which will help us determine whether our function is accurate or not. Right. So we are going to just divide training and validation data. We'll forget about the validation data for now, and we'll start plotting the training data on a chart, right? We'll put all the training data on the chart where my x-axis is the temperature and my y-axis is the cycle ranking, right? And we'll try to fix a particular line, a linear line between all those dots that we have plotted, right? 56 and 115, 61 and 126 rentals, all of those dots, right? This particular intersection is the starting point of my uh, uh, function, right? That okay, let's see that where the x is or the linear line is intersecting the y-axis. It's at somewhere around 35, right? So that's where that is the starting point for me, right? And the slope of the line is like for every 1 unit of x, we are actually increasing 1.5 units of y, right? So something something like this, that for every 1 unit of x, I'm going up on the y-axis by 1.5 units, right? So if I put this in a function, my function becomes that a function of x or finding the y is equal to 35 plus 1.5x, right? Now let us test this function to validate whether I am accurate or not on the validation data, right? Now on the validation data, that you can see that the values that we have got from the function or the prediction set is little different than what we actually have. And these predicted values are written with a little hat on the y, or called as y hat, right? Now let's see what we should do next. Let's put the actual values uh, from the validation data alongside the line from which we have predicted values calculated, right? So the green arrows that you see on the chart is what shows that whether the actual value is a little higher from what we have predicted, or is a little lower from what we have predicted, right? And this is how you actually can see how accurate your model is, right? This is a very, very simple example of a linear regression model. There are multiple metrics that you can calculate, and this whatever difference you get between y and y dash is called an error factor. That's what lets you know that whether you want to retrain your model or not, right? But for the exam per se, what you need to keep in mind is that if there is any numeric prediction that is required, I have to choose regression. Similarly, you have classification, which is another type of supervised machine learning machine learning algorithm, right, or form a supervised machine learning form, right? In classification, you have mathematics, right? But it's more about probability. It's more about categorization of a particular data, right? Where you have to define uh, or predict whether he'll be in this class or he'll be in that class. Categorization of the historical data, right? Okay. Here also we'll need some of the historical data because the supervised machine learning, right? We are talking about, let's say, some medical measurements, right? That has been taken during a health checkup, like weight, height, blood pressure, and so on. And instead of predicting how the numeric value, we'll try to predict the indicator whether the patient is diabetic or non-diabetic. There is only two output in this particular classification. So this is called binary classification, whether it's true or false, right? Again, you have to divide it into training and validation data set, correct? This time, plot the data set on X and Y axis, all the data points, right? But for classification, you have to consider something like a threshold, right? A threshold that can determine that if the value of predicted Y is above this, then I should put it in which class, and if it's below this, then I should put it in which class, right? That's my uh, threshold. That determines whether it's a true or a false, right? Anything above 0.5 will be considered as diabetic. Anything below 0.5 will be considered as non-diabetic. Okay. Now again, let's try to do some determination on the classification model and try to derive the same line and same function and try to put some details out on probability of whether being a diabetic or a non-diabetic patient, right? So you can see that probability of being a non-diabetic patient for first validation is higher. So the y hat that is calculated is is a non-diabetic, right? So y needs to be probability needs to be calculated for both the class for being a uh, for being a diabetic and being a non-diabetic. So being positive class and negative class, both of them. Whatever is there, you have to put it in the context or in the uh, on the charts, right? Now the next step is to evaluate this classification model. Classification model is evaluated with respect to something called as confusion matrix, which talks about four key factors: true positive, true negative, false positive, and false negative. Let's talk about them, right? So let's say if your y is 0 or y is negative, and if your prediction is also negative, right? This is called a true negative, right? If your y is positive and even if your y dash is positive, this is called as a true positive, right? If your y or if your actual value is negative, but the predicted value is positive, it is called as false positive. So it is determined as positive, but it's a false positive that has been determined. And similarly, if your actual prediction is positive, but your predicted value is negative, it is called as false negative. And when you put all of them together, it builds your uh, confusion metric. In this particular smaller example, we only have all four quadrants as one. Our target is to achieve the least number in here, correct? That would give us the best model where false, uh, both false positive and false negative are least, right? In a real life scenario, something like this would be with actual data or with huge size of data, something like this would be your confusion metric. And if you apply a heat map on top of it, you'll realize that yes, your true positives and true negatives are higher, which is the best model you can get, right? Questions that may come in from this particular slide is somewhere around true positive, true negative. So this four things, right? So you have to keep it in mind: when negative and negative, true negative; when positive and predicted positive, true positive; when negative and predicted positive, false positive; and when positive and predicted negative, false negative, right? And the second is when to use classification. Whenever there is a categorization required, you use classification. The third type of algorithm that is important for this particular examination is clustering, which is about grouping of a substance, right? Grouping of data points, right? This is the unsupervised learning algorithm, right? Clustering is an unsupervised machine learning algorithm, right? Suppose, let's say we collect some observations for flowers. This time we don't know the label of the flowers. We are only observing the number of petals that each sample has, and the height of each flower, right? What we want to do is group these flowers, group the flowers that are similar together, right? But we don't know what these flowers are called because we are not botanists, correct? So in that case, what we should do is, first of all, consider, because there are only two features, consider them as two-dimensional grid and plot all of them in a place, right? Plot all of them in this two-dimensional grid, right? Now we need to decide that how many groups we want to create. These groups are usually defined by K, right? And let's consider for this particular example, let us consider three groups, right? And then plot those three groups on this two-dimensional grid, right? These are called centroids, right? These points will become centroids for the cluster, right? Now, each K point that we have plotted, we have to assign some data points to those clusters, right? Let's assign three different clusters. So three points have given us three different groups and three clusters. Now let's move each centroid to the middle of the points that are in those cluster, right? So all those points will be in the center between the two data points that they have, between this and I'm sorry, between this and this. We have moved this point from here to here, right? I'm just going to keep the K equal to 3 here. And then you keep repeating the process again. Now you can see that some of the observations have moved nearer to some other centroid, right? So build the cluster once again, and finally you keep doing it. You keep changing this process, you keep iterating on this process, and it will give you three different clusters where all the flowers are are the same, right? I'm so sorry. This is called as k-means clustering, right? Which is which is taking the centroids and moves them to mean distance between the data points, right? On this particular slide, the only thing that you should keep in mind is uh, clusters are nothing but grouping of multiple samples, right? So anywhere when they talk about group or when they talk about arranging all of them together who have the similar feature, the answer is clustering, right? We'll see the questions that might come from this machine learning basics. However, it's time for us to move towards Azure's machine learning. So how you can achieve machine learning on Azure and what are some of the key factors on machine learning on Azure. So machine learning on Azure is a cloud-based platform for machine learning, which is built up on Azure subscription. In the machine learning service, you have to create something called as machine learning workspace that allows you to manage compute, data, experiments, models, and it also allows you to deploy and publish these models as services. This particular exam focuses on two major features of machine learning service. The first one is automated machine learning. Automated machine learning is easiest way to train a machine learning model for regression, classification, and forecasting. Now, forecasting is nothing but it is just a regression with time series element to it. Okay. There is a nice little visual interface for automated machine learning on your Azure Machine Learning Studio web portal. What you need to do is you just need to supply data to it. You supply data to it. It has a bunch of machine learning algorithms which it utilizes to build the model, and then you can actually use the model for your application. You can just out of the box use the model. That's your automated machine learning. It gives you this model that you can actually download and deploy, or you can just deploy directly on Azure Machine Learning Service and have the REST endpoint of this model where you pass the key and start predicting things. So simple, right? Just three steps practically. Provide the data, let Azure automated machine learning do its job, choose the model that you want to go for, deploy it, and start predicting. Correct? Very beautiful service. The question that comes from the on the examination is what kind of workload that automated machine learning can support. Automated machine learning as of now can only support classification, regression, and forecasting, right? Which are all three of them are supervised learning algorithms, okay, or supervised learning workloads. The next feature that we have on Azure Machine Learning Service, which this particular exam emphasizes on, is the Machine Learning Designer. I don't know why my slide is a little weird, where designer is italic. Okay, it's Machine Learning Designer. Must be some mistake, right? Machine Learning Designer allows you to set up a drag and drop visual interface, or allows you to it provides you with a drag and drop visual interface that can connect multiple modules and define steps for a multi-step workflow to prepare the data, clean the data, train the model, and to perform the model management via a pipeline, right? So I'm going to just divide this slide into two parts. So just I'm going to zoom into first part. This is the overall workflow for using a designer, right? You have to start by creating a pipeline that ingests and pre-processes a data set before the training and evaluation of the model. So when you are happy with model's performance after training and evaluation, you create an inference pipeline based on the training pipeline that you have created, which encapsulates the data, the pre-processing steps, and the trained model, so that you can predict the labels for the new data that you supply to the inference pipeline. And third and last but not the least, you deploy the inference pipeline as a service that can be utilized by your application, right? Whereas on the right hand side of the slide, you see the snippet of the pipeline, the training pipeline, right? Which will always start with a data set. Now, unfortunately, PowerPoint currently does not allow two of its feature to work together, hence I cannot circle on this data set, but I hope you can see the hand moving, right? So every training pipeline starts with a data set, right? And here we are going to talk about the classification examination, right? The diabetes diagnostic, right? Where I want to first pre-process the data. Now this medical data, for every feature you will have different kind of measurement, right? You will have height, which is in centimeter, weight, which is in kgs, the diastolic blood pressure will be in some other measure. So basically they are not on the same scale, right? To bring them on the same scale, we have used the normalized data model, right? So bringing the data points on the same scale is what is your normalized data. Now emphasis on this some modules a little bit more, because there might be questions where you may have to. I'm going to just go back to the pen. There might be cases where you may have to actually go back and arrange this guys. I'm so sorry. Arrange this guys in order. You always start with a data set, then pre-process the data, then you split the data into two, training and validation. The training data goes to train model along with the algorithm that you have chosen. The trained model then collects the validation data and goes to score, which predicts the y hat, and then you have evaluate model, which will evaluate the performance of the model, right? I would want to reiterate on the process. You select the data set, you normalize the scale of the data, you split the data into training and validation, right? The training data goes to train model, which takes another input, which is your algorithm, right? The validation data set goes to the score model, where the first input is trained model. It predicts the y dash, which is then passed to evaluation model or evaluate model module, which evaluates the accuracy or whatever the metric it would be for that particular model, right? This is something that will be very, very important and very, very essential for the examination, right? Now I'm going to again go back to sample question. So this particular section has a lot of questions, so I'm going to just use them, right? This is the first one. An automobile reseller wants to use historic sales data to train a machine learning model to predict the price of a pre-owned car based on the characteristics like age or engine size or mileage. What kind of machine learning model does the reseller need to create? I'm going to wait for a minute. Mhm. Yeah, the answers are flowing. And some of you are absolutely right. It it is a regression kind of model that it needs to create, right? Because it is predicting the price of a car, right? Next question is a bank wants to use the historic loan repayment records to categorize the loan application as low risk or high risk based on the characteristics. What kind of ML model does the bank need to create? Again, I'm going to wait for a minute. Nice. I see the answers flowing. Absolutely correct. Because it's a categorization, it is classification model. You the bank wants to categorize the applicants on two different categories, low risk or high risk. It is going to classify the applicants into two different class, and hence the correct answer is classification, right? These are some of the questions which included the use case. There will be some of the questions which are direct, something like this. Which of the following type of machine learning is an example of unsupervised machine learning? Mhm. Answers are flowing in. I request all of you, those who are writing these answers, please put your name. Don't submit it as anonymously. Uh, we'll not know who you are, right, or who have replied, right? Absolutely correct. All of you are bang on this particular question, right? It is the answer is clustering. Now, before we move on to the next question, the visual designer as well as the automated machine learning, both of them are only available if you go ahead and create a enterprise uh, machine learning workspace or enterprise machine learning service. There are two options in creating this machine learning service. You have basic and you have enterprise. This both automated machine learning, the designer, the visual designer, and data drift detections. These are the three features that are only available on uh, enterprise level machine learning service, right? Why I had to touch upon this because one, I missed it in the slide, and two, the next question talks about it. You plan to use Azure Machine Learning Designer to create and publish a regression model. Which edition should you choose when creating a Azure Machine Learning workspace? Answers are welcomed in the chat. Mhm. Okay. Okay. Answers are flowing. Absolutely correct. Right. The uh, enterprise is the edition that you should choose if you want to go with the machine learning designer. Right. Let's move on to the next question. You are creating a training pipeline for a regression model using the data set that has multiple numeric column, which the values are on different scales. You want to transform the numeric columns so that the values are all on the same scale or similar scale based on the relations, right? To the minimum and maximum values for each of the column. Which module should you add to the pipeline, right? We have discussed this. Is it select columns in the data set? Is it normalize the data? Or is it the clean missing data? Answers are flowing. Absolutely bang on, right? All of you have got it right. The correct answer is normalize the data. I'm so sorry. To bring them on the same scale, right? So these are some of the questions that you might get from this particular, these are some of the similar questions that you may get from this particular section, right? The next section that exam scales you on is for describing the features of computer vision workloads on Azure. Again, this has 15 to 20% weightage, which can bring about 8 to 10 questions on board from this topics. This particular setup judges you on computer vision's concepts, uh, the 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 applications of computer vision, uh, and how you use or what kind of services you use on Azure for this computer vision, right? So computer vision is nothing but making sure that you analyze the images correctly to derive some of the information from the photograph or from the video or from the live stream that is being flown from a camera, right? Let's see some of the applications, right? First of all is image classification, right? Let's say identifying uh, a taxi, right? Or identifying uh, or classifying taxis based on the type of the vehicle uh, for a traffic monitoring solution. Another application is detecting where that object is, right? That is called object detection, where you detect which particular object or which particular pixels cover car or which particular pixels cover cyclist or which particular bounding box defines car, right? So your image classification answers the question of what is this an image of, whereas your object detection answers the question that what objects are in this image and where are they, right? The third one is semantic segmentation. This is a advanced kind of models that I mean advanced kind of classification model that actually classifies individual pixels uh, in the image based on the object they belong to. Right. For an example, it can overlay masks on the image to indicate pixels that belong to bus or that belongs to car or that belongs to the cyclists. Like I just zoom it so that you can see it clearly. Correct? Okay. The next kind of application is analyzing the image or trying to see what the image is all about. Right here, the image is analyzed as a person with a dog on a street. Right. The next kind of application is detecting and recognizing faces, right? Based on and bounding, creating a bounding box surrounding the face. There are further face APIs available that can determine features like emotion, the age, and so on, right? And finally, the optical character recognition, which talks about extracting text, extracting text from an image, right? Like in the example, the Toronto Dominion Bank is extracted from the image, right? All of these capabilities, right, is clubbed, right? Not only this, even the NLP, even your text analysis, everything is clubbed in a suite which is called as cognitive services. Cognitive services can be created for standalone resources for service specific services like computer vision, uh, okay, like computer vision or like text analytics or face APIs or custom vision, speech services, all of the different different services you can create for standalone resources of cognitive services, or you can have a generalized resource that can be created, which can be consumed by an application for all those cognitive APIs based on a REST endpoint, a HTTPS endpoint, and an authentication key that can authenticate your application to utilize that REST endpoint. These are pre-articulated models for you to just start using it, right? The first one is here, right? Computer vision service. Computer vision is a cognitive service that is pre-trained, uh, that has pre-trained model that can detect and locate over 10,000 classes of common object. It can generate an automatic caption for the image and a set of relevant tags that relate to the content, right? The tags can then be utilized to index the image, to search the image, right? It can actually detect faces and analyze the human faces. It can enable content moderation, identifying images that can contain that contains adult or uh, racy or gory content, right? It can detect and extract the text in an image, right? Where we can do OCR and try to analyze. Let's say one of the example is I want to convert legal documents to PDFs by scanning them, right? That's possible using OCR, right? The next cognitive service is custom vision service. Custom vision cognitive service actually enables you to train a custom model for either image classification or object detection. uh, I don't know the numbers, but this is the service that is used by a lot of organizations now, as of now, to detect whether the end user is wearing the mask or not. Right? It's very, very easy to build one. You just have to provide X number of images, 10 to 15 images of different angles by while wearing a mask, 10 to 15 images where you are not wearing a mask, give it to the service, click one button, the service will start model training. It will train the model and then it should be able to predict whether you are wearing a mask or not within when you give a new image to it. It's very, very fast and very, very easy. Can be utilized for many, many use cases. The use case that you see on the screen is more about a grocery store kind of a use case where you want to detect apples, oranges, and banana, and you want to see which the customer is picking up what, right? The face service allows you to have analysis on the face. Again, in the example, you can see that there are two beautiful ladies there. One of them is Sama and Anisa. It has also recognized the face, right? And it rates their emotions based on happiness, and even it tries to get their age out, right? You can also do identity verification and similarity with the face APIs. Again, this also could be a standalone resource that you can create, or it can be part of the cognitive services suite. The computer vision service can also extract text from an image. It provides the OCR or optical character recognition capabilities to the computer vision APIs that can detect not only the printed text, but it can also detect the handwritten text, as you can see on the image on the slide, right? You can do text extraction from on a real time, or you can also have a asynchronous analysis of a larger data set given, right? So next one that is the most important one, right? For or most, I had the question surrounding that particular service in like in the exam, right? Which is the form recognizer service, right? It can extract key value pairs for a custom trained model. You can give your own forms and you can let it know that here this is a key and for this key here is the value, right? Let's say you have your own invoices and you want to make sure that you want to add those invoices in your SAP or any ERP software, and you have trained a model. You have printed the invoice or you have handwritten invoices which you want to convert now in the digital form. It's very, very easy to convert with the form recognizer. If it's a receipt, there is a pre-trained receipt model available which can extract key and value pairs from the form recognizer service, right? So that's about the third module or third study area where you will get questions from, right? And here is one of the question, right? You want to use the computer vision service to analyze images, uh, and you also want to use the text analysis service to analyze the text. Now you want developers to require only one key and endpoint to access all the services. What kind of resource will you create? Will you create a computer vision resource? Will you create a cognitive service resource, or will you create a text analysis resource? I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes for the answers. Answers started flowing in the chat. Mhm. Absolutely correct. The correct answer is a cognitive services resource. A is the correct answer. I'm sorry, cognitive services resource is the correct answer because you want your developers to use only one uh, endpoint and one key, correct? Let's move on to the next question, right? You want to use the computer vision service to identify the location of individual items in an image. Which of the following features should you retrieve? Should you retrieve object? Should you retrieve tags, or should you retrieve categories? And I'm waiting for answers in chat. Absolutely correct. Most of you are bang on. The answer is object. Okay. Last question on this particular segment. You plan to use custom vision service to train an image classification model. You want to create resource that can be used for model training and not for prediction. What kind of resource will you create? Custom vision resource, cognitive service resource, or computer vision resource? It's a tricky one, right? I'm still waiting for answers. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Some of you are on point. It's custom vision service. Because there is no other resource mentioned in the question, we'll go ahead and create only the custom vision resource, right? Let's move on to quickly. Let's move on to the next one. We are little short of a time, right? The next section is about natural language processing. Uh, this particular section also has somewhere around 15 to 20% of the weightage, which gives you 8 to 10 questions, right? Which natural language processing consists of analyzing the text and identifying the entities within the text, uh, analysis of the sentiment based on a feedback, recognition and recognition of the speech and getting the synthesis out of the speech. It can also do a live translation or machine translation, and it can also have semantic language modeling where it can understand and can converse with you, right? Uh, Cognitive services suite is very, very rich in these terms as well. It has text analysis service that can be used to detect the language, to extract key phrases, to detect entity in a word, and to have sentiment analysis on a particular text, right? A lot, this all toolkits are also available. You can build it in Python without any doubt, but these are out of the box solutions that is available for you where you only have REST endpoint you can use, right? The speech service or speech suite of cognitive service can do text to speech and speech to text. Speech to text is something that we saw just now. I can just demo it once again. This is the speech to text capability of the speech suite under cognitive services. Okay. And it can also do speech translation from one language to another language. The translated text service can work on text. You provide the text and it will translate and give it to you. Uh, and then you have language understanding service or LOIS, as they say, which can do custom language modeling, which can understand based on your need, right? Let's talk about them a little bit, right? So let's say if I give a statement to text as a service, like I had a wonderful vacation in France, right? It can determine that this particular sentence is written in English, right? It has a 88% positive sentiment, right? It has a wonderful vacation as a key phrase, and it has also identified entity, which is France. Okay. The speech recognition and synthesis service can, as I stated earlier, it uses speech to text capabilities to transcribe the audible speech in text and text to speech to dictate or to convert audible speech from the text. Translation service can actually work between more than 60 languages where you can either do a translation or it can also be with either do a translation of text or you can use the speech service which can actually do live translation of the speech which can convert it into different services or different languages, right? Those 60 languages can be utilized here as well, right? The important factor on this particular module is Lewis. Rather, all the points that I talked about will be a candidate to a question and will definitely be there in examination some way or the other, right? Now, this is language understanding. When I say that, hey, switch on the light, that is what I have uttered. So that's called an utterance. Now, my Lewis or the language understanding understands that it has an entity which I am talking about, which is the light, right? Right. And my intent or the action that I uh, want to perform is turning the light on, right? That's the intent. So I should just turn the light on. And based on that, I can then later, after understanding, I can later trigger something or I can later do some activity, right? Like a lot of us have been playing with Cortana, right? And when you say, hey, Cortana, do this for me, and Cortana pops up and Cortana starts doing it. Hey, Cortana, block my calendar for 10 o'clock. It blocks the calendar for 10 o'clock, right? That is your language understanding where the utterance is block my calendar for 10 o'clock. The entities are calendar and 10 o'clock. And the intent is to create a meeting or block it at 10 o'clock, right? You can build the model in a way where Cortana can then come back and ask me that from 10 till when. and whether it's a meeting or an appointment, right? All those capabilities you can ingest, and the same will be converted to question. The same will come as questions for you in the examination, that I want to build this capability, I want to translate a particular text, or I want to make sure that I speak in English and the participants are able to hear it in Spanish or French or even the native Indian languages like Telugu or Tamil or Hindi. Uh, that is all possible with which service. It won't have native Hindi. Obviously, it will not have any cultural bias, but it will say that I want the language to be translated. How should I do it? And you can choose speech or translated text for your use, right? So some of the questions will come from there. And last section that the exam judges you on is on conversational AI, where it talks about bots, majorly two different services, the Azure's bot service and the Q&A maker, which will have a higher emphasis in the examination, right? Conversational AI is something that builds on other AI workloads. In particular, it builds on natural language processing workload, right? And may use machine learning, potentially computer vision as well, right? Where you can create a solution that enables a dialogue between the AI agent and a human, right? Generically, the conversational AI agents are known as bots, right? Which can which can engage over multiple channels like web interface or email or social media platforms or voice, right? Microsoft have two different ways of creating bot. First one is the Q&A maker service, which can where you can define a knowledge base of question and answer pairs uh, by enabling question and answers, by entering question and answers, or by providing an FAQ document, or by giving a PDF, or by using the uh, built-in chit chat, or you can actually have a built-in chit chat and build a knowledge base out of it, right? That can later be used to integrate with a bot and can be consumed from that particular bot, right? That Q&A maker service searches every kind of phrase that you write, and it gives you answers from the knowledge base as it knows, right? It'll match at least if it has at least a 60% match, it will return the answer, right? The last service that is important for this particular examination is the Azure bot service, which is a cloud-based platform for developing and managing your bots. It can integrate with Lewis, it can integrate with Q&A Maker, it can connect, and even some of the cognitive services like computer vision also can be utilized uh, from your bot, right? Uh, this can connect to multiple channels like web chat, email, Microsoft Teams, right, or many more, right? It can actually be very, very useful for scenarios like, let's say, something like this, like a webinar where I have a bot integrated with the webinar, which is actually answering your questions, right? So that's great example of the bot service. We have seen some of the questions that come from this particular section are based on, let's say I want to create a FAQ bot. What services should I use? There are two services that that you have to use to create a FAQ bot: the Q&A service and the bot service, both of them. Q&A service can directly integrate with web interface. So the questions also may come like I have FAQ system. I want to integrate, I want to call an API that can return FAQ for me. Which service should I choose? In that case, also you have to use Q&A service. Okay. That's where I conclude the webinar for AI 900. I am still here. If you have any questions, concerns on AI 900, feel free to write it in the chat, in the questions. I'd be happy to answer them. You can, if you don't have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on cloudnet.in or sales@cloudnet.in or the phone number that is provided in the chat. Thank you so much for attending. Stay in touch. You can get connected with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any further later, also if you need any kind of help, I'd be very, very obliged to help. If you are looking for trainings on this AI 900 or any other, you can very well reach out to us on the coordinates shown on the screen. I'm just going to focus on the coordinates. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I'm Prashant from Cloud Consulting team. Hope you all had a great session today. I'm here to help you on how one can become an Azure expert in the most economical and the fastest way considering the current situation. So the prevailing situation has not only given us the fear of losing the job, but also the anxiety of finding one. So a couple of questions added to this. Are our skills relevant to survive the economic crisis the world is experiencing? How valuable are you to your employers? And what are the skills aligned with job market opportunities? With this, let me pull out some more facts on the current trend as to why there is a need today to take the Azure certification. 70% of CIOs have cloud first strategy. 85% of enterprises pledge to integrate cloud architecture in their organizations. By 2021, 38% of IT positions will be cloud related. 24% of respondents said they took Microsoft training in the past 12 months. 21% of respondents said they received a job offer or promotion upon sharing their Microsoft digital badge with employers. With these facts, let's move on to what are the benefits of getting certified. Certified employee will always get greater recognition. Microsoft certified technologies earn up to 20% more. Cloud certifications increases the employability. Certified teams are more productive than non-certified teams. In order to support this, we have a program called Azure MasterPass, which is a one-stop solution for all your Azure certification needs. So before moving on to the details of Azure MasterPass, let's see why one has to choose Cloud that and what are the benefits of that. Cloud that we are the Microsoft worldwide learning partners and we have delivered highest number of Azure trainings in India so far. Our mission is to help IT professionals gear up and ensure against the tides of change. Trained 20,000 plus professionals in classroom trainings and 200K professionals through online trainings. We also have a dynamic team of certified professionals and robust consulting division that complements our trainings. Now let's see what are the details of the Azure MasterPass and why one has to choose that. This pass allows access to 14 Azure certification courses designed and run by highly qualified cloud experts. It also helps to upskill and keep aligned to the market opportunities, which is great for freshers, experienced, and expert professionals alike. This pass holders will also be eligible to get expert guidance and to choose the right cloud career path. And also get additional benefits like test preparation, resume building, placement support, and mock interviews. Let's see what are the certifications which are part of this Azure MasterPass. One can start with Azure Fundamentals, which is AZ900, and move on to Azure Administrator Certification, which is AZ103, or the latest one, which is AZ104. Developing Solutions for Azure, which is a developer certification, which is AZ203, or the latest one, which is AZ204. Architect Technologies or Architect Design, which is AZ300 or AZ301. The latest one is AZ304. Azure DevOps Engineer, which is AZ400, Azure Security Certification, which is AZ500, designing and implementing an Azure AI solution and data science solution, which is AI100 and DP100 respectively. implementing an Azure data solution and designing an Azure data solution which is DP 200 and 201 respectively, and couple of new certifications added, which is Azure for IoT developers, AZ220, and Azure for SAP workloads, which is AZ120. All these certifications are a part which one can target under this Azure MasterPass. Now let's see what are the Azure MasterPass subscription fee and also the options available. We have a monthly option, quarterly, half yearly, and also yearly option. Monthly Azure MasterPass will cost you 19,900 plus GST. 3 months option will cost you 34,900 plus GST of 18%. 6 months option will cost you 44,900 plus GST of 18%. 12 months option will cost you 59,900 plus GST of 18%. So we will also be sending the Azure MasterPass details to you over an email, and I request you to register your interest. So once register, we will also call you and help you more in detail. So with this, one can become an Azure expert in the most economical and also the fastest way. I hope you enjoyed the session today, and thanks a lot for joining this session. Have a great day.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being a great audience, guys. Thank you so much. I'd want to close this session. If you have any further doubts, my profile is already there. Thank you so much, guys.